Whoa! I've already had it done twice now.
Once wasn't good enough?
Was this going to be an example?
Wow,
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So for you guys that haven't fished
Again,
Wahoo before,
Denny.
Where we at? If you saw this laying on the deck, would you be careful? Yeah, especially you guys with flaps. There's 4 of these and they're all way sharper than any knife in Dan's kitchen in the mouth of the wok. So you basically treat every one like it looks like that with 4 blades instead of 2. You can cut a finger off just like that. I know if one of the guys who worked on one of these boats, the guy flipped the gun on the Royal Polaris, flipped a 50-pound Wahoo, and he said it felt like it went like that on his leg. And the guy that did it went, "Holy shit, Dennis!" He looked down, he had a flap of skin that was that big, hanging off his calf. It was 200 inches. So they're that sharp. So hopefully, I mean, the whole idea is to get down here, get on a cherry. You gotta like the weather. I mean, we'll see. We're gonna get them, we're not gonna get them, but we're assuming we're gonna get them. So we start catching them, it gets exciting. Fish move like a rocket ship. It's real easy to get crazy excited, but you don't want to get so excited, especially if we're getting a bunch of them and there's some laying around. The guys are going to do everything they can to get them put away, but there might be one that's gaffed, laying there, just gaffed, and somebody comes running because they got to follow their fish, not paying attention, and kick one, especially with open shoes. You don't want to have to stop fishing so somebody's toe back on. So I might put it on the back.
I actually put our shoes on.
Well, it's a good idea. You got to be careful. That's the main thing. And for you guys that haven't fished them, it's another week with this troll fish was an example. You got all these nice fancy 2-speed reels. You don't use them for walking. 1-speed, high gear all the time. It's real common when you get a bite eating troll fish, especially these big ones. Troll fish get bit on a bomb, they'll take a bunch of line and they'll turn around and they'll come right back at you like a rocket ship. And if you're in low gear, you can't catch up. And the lure, because it's a double whammy, they got a head that's harder than mine. And these big hooks, part of that is to get it buried in there, but it's oftentimes, it's very common to catch a wahoo. Fight the thing all the way to the boat, the guy gaffs it, you slack off like you're supposed to, and the lure goes, beep, it falls right on the deck, which means if you would have slacked off for even a half a second, you would have lost that one. And you will, if there's any amount of them, if you get any amount of bites, it's not like catching or I mean, if you catch half of your bites, especially on the casting lures, you're actually doing pretty good. It can be frustrating, but it can be exciting as hell. And typically the fish that show up this time of year here are the good ones. Jonathan said they had a few 70-pounders, so they'll give you a tussle. But like I say, never give up. You may think you lost the fish because the line goes slack, but never give up until the lure's back, because they'll come right back. In fact, a lot of times and it's one of those things, your buddy's going to saw you off if we get any good shot at him. But there's a lot of times you can't even help it. I mean, you literally, especially from the upper deck, a guy will hook one. We had one once, boy, you talked about a bunch of pissed off guys. We had a 5-weight jig strike, and the guys almost had all 5 fish up on the Marauders. And this guy gets bit on the bait, sets the hook. He set the hook over here, and his line was still going that way, and you could see the silver flash go all the way across the stern and up the starboard side of the boat.
Oh, around there.
He didn't grab them. It was just like he went through there with that knife and 5 troll fish. Every one of them.
Oh my God.
No, it was just the line. The line's going so fast that it just...
So what was I supposed to do, Jim?
So we have to cut our anchor line off on a somewhat regular basis. You get one, anchor fishing in Layla's Rocks, a big wahoo, they get around at 1 cents and they'll cut it so fast even in the water that it actually melts it. They haul ass. So it can happen. And if you get a fish that does that, you can try to get up the rail as fast as you can, but not so fast that you bowl somebody over or kick one.
Now onto the bait. Get hit on bait.
You fish them with bait, you fish them the same way you always do. Except especially big wahoo. If you get bit and you miss it, a lot of times they come and they'll knock, hit your bait, cut it in half, and come back for the second half. Yes, because that's the
give it there.
Exactly, at least for a few seconds to make sure. I mean, you'll see them do it sometimes. They'll cut it in half and then hit the other half on the second pass.
How long after you pick it up did you lock the gauge on it?
You can't set the hook fast.
Really?
No, so it's totally on like yellowtail and tuna.
Well, I mean, I don't, with tuna and stuff, I mean, if you're fishing a circle, as soon as I know I got a bite, I put it in gear.
You do.
Absolutely. Because they're not, these aren't nibblers, these are gobblers.
So what's that about putting in the gear when you picked up immediately?
Well, I do. I fish that way on almost anything. You know, I mean, if you're fishing yellowtail with a great big mackerel, but if you're fishing with sardines, I mean, they get close, they start a suction. That thing is gone. Yeah. So you got, you know, you let them run a little bit. But what happens with wahoo sometimes, they actually go over the top and they'll suck the thing, the wire leader all the way through, and you get bit off. Yeah, they'll do that with the overspeed lure. How long?
Wire bait.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, realistically, that's good enough because it's easy to fish with. If you go any longer, it's a pain in the ass. But you'll get some little overspeed. You'll see them do it with lure sometimes. You know, with trolling gear, it's better a little longer. But when you're fishing bait or bombs, it's better to be something you can work with. Cast.
So there must be wahoo down here.
We wouldn't
We had
stand
quite a
it
bunch
here.
of wahoos sitting on the deck. And this guy wants to see how sharp his teeth was. This is
no!
so- Seriously. And he takes his finger and goes over the teeth and just lacerates it. I mean, and the deckhand came and said, I want to show you something.
No, they're as sharp as scalpels.
Monofilm, and just took it like this and went down over the teeth. Boom.
Yeah.
This guy messed his hand up. So they got seriously sharp teeth.
You can take, I've taken a pencil, and you know, this is with just a little bit of pressure, but not a lot. You put a pencil and cut it in half. It's like a Ginsu knife. It's probably where they got the idea.
Scalpels.
Of course, when you look
Say
at
like
them,
scalpels.
the teeth look tiny and little. They don't look dangerous. Really, they look little.
Well, it's that serrated, it's a serrated blade, and right there fringe.
What do you put on your fucking calendar?
It was dead.
Well, you know, more guys get hurt with the dead ones than the live ones. You know, reach down and see when we get them. When you get a fish, the first thing the guys do, it's not because they really like it, they want to feel it. So you know you fuck that. Because all the teeth will fall up and get you. So let the guys deal with that, and if it hasn't been hit, even though it looks dead, you know, one flop up and we had a guy, this was a crew member, this is one of my favorite stories too. This guy's a good friend of mine. Big water, like a 75-pounder. He yapped it himself with a troll fish on a marauder. And he was up the side, and you know, it's so long, and it's the way that this boat is, you can't pull back far enough to get it on board, so he did one of these. Everybody else was busy with roundhouse it on board. And when he did that, the other marauder hook went in his pants and snagged, went in, the whole hook went in his leg to the heart. And the mouth of the wahoo, great big wahoo, and he's got the thing, the head with the gaff, and he's screaming because the hook's in his leg, and he's crawling backwards, burying the hook in his leg. He's like, gee, stop moving, stop moving. This great big hook is just going but it's like jaws are getting closer. And we had to pull it right there to get enough slack to get the hook out of his leg.
So Steve, they called you over to apply direct pressure.
Mouth to mouth.
I'm sorry.
I'm
gonna pay for that one.
They had to, I mean, I was laughing. It wasn't. You had to laugh. JD wasn't laughing. Oh, it was JD. He owns one of the sharks. Good guy.
Thanks, Captain.